be stubborn. I never ever quit when it looks like this is a terrible idea or you hear no for the thousandth time. You just have to persevere and keep going and keep pushing because it only takes the one time. I mean, you can quote Edison and all these other people and Colonel Sanders, but
Hmm.
it really only takes the one time for it to blow up. And if you stop, then you'll never find out that one time.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that has founded several startups that are now into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. And today we have another great guest on the episode, on the podcast, and is Rob Kessler. And Rob has been in sales his whole life. So he started out all the way at 16 selling some soccer and volleyball equipment, and then he basically had the guy that was running the store turn over the keys to him, tell him have a good time, and he did a great job at it. Then went through school, came out, and worked or after college, worked with his dad. I think he said for Diamonds for a bit of time, and then business wasn't good, moved over to doing some car sales, house sales, and then came into then married a stunt woman, which is an interesting. I always just find it interesting when there's a stunt person involved. And then as they're getting married, had an idea for a product that was an R&D for 3 years plus, and now is doing that as his business and having a great time at it. So with that much as of an introduction, welcome onto the podcast, Rob.
Hey, thanks so much. Good to be here.
So I gave kind of the 30 or the 5-second quick run through of everything, but maybe now take us back in time and tell us a little bit more about your journey and how it all got going for you.
Yeah, I will. So, it started with, I started working probably whatever you can, 15 and a half. And the only way to get a car at my house was to have a job so I could pay for the insurance. So found a job. I was playing soccer. I found a job at a soccer and volleyball store. And yeah, like you said, day one, the owner gave me a key to the store and a code to the alarm system like the other employees. And he just put his full faith in all of us. And it really made us feel like owners from day one. And I was, 17 years old. So he really gave us the confidence and the support to follow our path within the business and try to help it grow. And it was an amazing foundation for me. So started there, went off to college, was going to quit after 2 years of college because I was making $14,000 a year and thought I was living
I'm
in hog
rich.
heaven.
I'll never know what to spend all this money with.
$1,200 a month. Holy cow. So about 2 years in, I said, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm a real goal oriented guy. So I hunkered down. I took summer schools and everything I could to catch up and graduated college in 4 years. First person in my family to graduate college. And did that while I was working for my dad. My junior and senior year, I was working full-time in the jewelry store. So found time for classes, found time for work. And yeah, did that. So Kessler's Diamond Center is the third largest independent jeweler in the Midwest or in the country. 7 stores now. So I did that. I helped him open up one of his first stores out of town. It was in a really small town in Wisconsin, and just didn't really like the small town life. So my dad is the business's number one, and he didn't have really anywhere to put me into one of the other stores. So he said, you know what, if you're ever going to work here your whole life and you're going to run this company someday, you should have some outside experience. So I had a passion for cars, so I went and sold cars for a while.
Jumping in on that really quick. So did you take that? So there could be a couple ways you could take that, right? It's dad fired me, now I got to go find a job, or dad loves me and he wants me to grow. So which way did you take it, or how did it turn out? Was it the dad fired me, now I got to find another job, or hey, that was so kind of him and I appreciate him looking after me?
No, that was totally my decision. I didn't want to live in that town anymore, and he wasn't going to just make an arrangement for me because I was a son in one of the other stores. So there wasn't a position for me. And so it wasn't a firing at all. It was just like, I really had to get out of that town. I just hated it. So did that and sold cars for a while. And then I moved over to Los Angeles for about a year with some friends. Since I worked full-time through college, I didn't get to do any of the spring breaks or summer breaks, or every time that there wasn't work, or it wasn't class, I was working. So I kind of lumped it all into one 9-month party in Los Angeles, and
Mm.
came home and got into real estate, which I loved. I've had my license for 15 years. Did lots of real estate there with the biggest firm, First Weber Group. Um, and then while I was doing that, I started a screen printing business because I was working on a condo project. Graphic tees were like the hottest thing. If you remember
Mm.
Ed Hardy and all those, $125 graphic T-shirts. I'm like, I knew from
Mm.
my soccer and volleyball days, and we did all the jerseys and stuff, a little bit about screen printing. So I started a little clothing line. The screen printers were charging me way too much, so I figured out how to screen print and started a
Mm.
little screen printing business, which overtook the clothing line business. And
Mm.
yeah, sold that 5 years ago, so my wife and I could move out to Los Angeles. And started that little screen house and bought a 6,000 square foot building that my wife moved her gym into, and I had my screen printing business in, and we sold all that stuff.
So
Got married in
one question before
2013.
we go off the screen printing, and it has nothing to do with screen printing. So you did mention your wife is a stunt woman, right?
Mhm.
So how did you, I guess first, how did you meet a stunt woman? I know it's completely not your journey, but it's just interesting because stunt women always sound, or stunt anybody sounds interesting. So how did you meet her? And then what did she actually do? Is it as interesting and as exciting as it sounds, or is it a lot more boring?
So she did that. That happened after we got to Los Angeles, we got here 5 years ago. And we've been married for 8 years in February.
Mm.
So she was a corporate person when we met, and I encouraged her to follow her passion in fitness.
Mm.
So she started training people after work in the summer one year, and by the end of the summer, she quit her corporate job because she had so many clients. And we bought that commercial building. We sold all that stuff, sold everything we knew, and moved to a town we knew nobody in. And she just happened to meet a guy. The one person we knew had a dog, one of the leasing guys at our apartment building. So we were
Mm.
walking our dogs one day, and she didn't know what she was going to do. And he's like, there was a stunt guy that used to live here. Do you want to meet him? And she's like, hell yeah, that sounds great. So she met him, and she did everything that he suggested. And he introduced her to all the right people. And she was in Captain Marvel as one of the Skrulls.
Huh.
She doubled Taylor Swift in a music video. She's working today on Reno 911. So she's been all over the board. She's worked more in the first 4 years than most stunt people do in 10, because she's got a business degree and she understands how to hustle on the business side. So
So
she's just
last
crushing it.
question on that is, being a stunt woman or a stunt person is exciting as it sounds?
When she's working, she just called right before this, and she goes, we're stuck. Like, they're doing all this stuff over here, and we're just sitting around, and it's kind of boring. And so
Huh.
when there's, she could spend a 12-hour day on set and work for 45 minutes.
Huh.
So it just depends on, at what point of the day she's in. When she's working, she loves it. Like, she would do it for free if we could afford to live in Los Angeles without
Oh,
that
I don't know that you're
income.
ever going to find a way to live in Los Angeles for free. All right. Well, that was a complete aside. It was just one that I'm like, well, I've never met somebody that did that was a stunt person or knew anybody, stunt people. So I thought I would at least have to dive into that slightly. So now getting back to your journey, which is, so now you guys moved to Los Angeles. She was doing the stunt woman gig. You were running the screen printing gig. And then I think that then from there, you shifted, or you made adjustments. So where did you go from the screen printing?
So you back up a little bit. We got married in 2013 in Jamaica. I hate wearing ties. So, it was a beach wedding. I had no shoes. Before I could even say I do in my brand new freshly pressed shirt, it was just a sloppy mess, and it made me crazy. So I came home from Jamaica after looking at the wedding photos from the biggest day of my life and said, I got to fix this. There's nothing. I Googled everything I could find. There was nothing out there. And so I started working on it. We stepped into the IP realm with our
Mm.
first, I think it was $2,000 to do the patent check.
Mm.
And that's the beginning of our multi-$1,000 checks that we were writing to get this patent. But
Mm.
so we started doing that. There was nothing out there, and I just dove headstrong into it. And
Mm.
took, like you said, 3 years of R&D to get it right. And now we've been selling for about 5 years, and it's been crazy. Yeah.
So that 3 years of R&D isn't as always as simple as you let on. So, when you're doing the R&D, first of all, what were you, was this your full-time gig? Were you doing it as a side hustle at the time, or how did you kind of make ends meet, so to speak, while you're doing the R&D in order to get the product up and going?
So that was in the screen printing days. So I had the
Mm,
screen printing business doing all day, and then when I had time, I would work on $1 million collar.
mm,
I had fortunately had a lot of friends with old dress shirts that they were willing to give them to me. So I tested every plastic I could find on the market. Everything melted at the dry cleaner.
mm.
So yeah, I ruined about 100 shirts figuring this out. And if you see I have a picture of like all the different designs that I had come up with over the years. It's like, how did
Mm,
you ever think that was going to work? Because it worked in one shirt one time, would have looked really great, and then it's like, well,
mm.
but fortunately, I found out really quick that dress shirts are all made essentially the same, and they've got a lot of similar characteristics, and enough that I could make a universal design for my product.
Mm. Now, one of the other things I thought was interesting when we talked a little bit before the podcast. So early on in your journey, you're doing the R&D, and I can't remember exactly when you said, but originally you kind of thought, hey, we were going to make our own shirts, and you did, I think, a Kickstarter campaign. They
Mhm.
reached half your goal, and so obviously you didn't reach your whole goal. You don't get the money, at least not on Kickstarter. I think Indiegogo is a little different, but you did that, and you said, okay. But one of the feedback I think you said was, hey, people are saying, why sell the whole shirt when you can just steal the part that fixes the collar? So maybe dive into a little bit about how did that go, or how did you decide to make that pivot?
Yeah, I mean, when we first got into this, we thought, well, let's just make a dress shirt. I mean, it makes sense, right?
Mm,
So we did the Kickstarter. We got about halfway to our goal, like you said. But the unequivocal feedback was, why are you trying to compete with all the other brands? Why not just license the technology to them? And why can't I upgrade the shirts I already own? So change the design of the product to
mm,
fit and be universal
mm,
after that, and listen to what people's feedback was. And when people are willing to give you money, it's a lot more honest feedback than
mm.
asking Joe Blow on the street that doesn't have any vested interest in
Or even
whether or
worse,
not the product.
asking family, which they're never going to give you an honest answer because they don't want to hurt
Yeah,
your feelings.
yeah, exactly. I mean, these people would put up $18,000 of our $40,000 goal, and that was their feedback. So we
Mm.
listened and followed what they said. So we have an aftermarket version now.
Now,
We've sold
before
about
you
300.
go beyond that, so when you're listening, because one of the things a lot of times was you're a startup or a small business or anybody, but you start to drink your own Kool-Aid, or you buy into your own idea that, hey, no, this is the best way to do it, and I know what I'm talking about, and you can get a bit of a blind, a narrow vision in the sense that you don't take input or you don't take feedback. You're saying, oh, they haven't spent as much time, or they don't know the market or anything else. So how do you avoid, as you're getting that feedback from Kickstarter and you're saying, hey, you by that point, you put in some time and effort. You obviously have an idea and a concept and a product. And you're doing that, and how was it to actually say, okay, I need to step back and I need to pivot? Was it just as simple as, hey, I missed the mark and I'm going to adjust, or did it take you a bit of time, or how did you actually take that feedback?
Um, it was pretty obvious to us. I mean, this was right
Mm,
at the time Kickstarter was as hot as it ever was, probably
mm,
2014, I think. We were
mm,
really early in the process. And a hoodie company had just raised like $10 million. We're like, dude, we can do a dress shirt for 40 bucks, 40,000 bucks. So it was a pretty good slap saying, you know what, you're not on the right track. If we couldn't hit our goal, that was so much lower than what we were thinking that we would be able to get to. So I think if you watch any episodes of Shark Tank, you'll find that a lot of entrepreneurs, especially inventors, get in the way of their own product and their own success. And I wasn't going to fall down that path at all. So.
So, all right. So now, no, and I think that's insightful. And I think that, I think that's a good thing when you're in a business. You just need to realize, hey, we may need to adjust. We need to pivot. And it's not that somebody's trying to be rude or offensive or anything else about, because they don't have any skin in the game. They're just trying to say, hey, this is what, my feedback or what I would do or why I would buy the product or if I were going to give you money. So I think it's a valuable skill is to say, hey, we need to listen to the feedback in the market. And I think it's also kind of in the heyday of Kickstarter. I used to think it was really cool, and now it's kind of evolved into more of it's, hey, we're going to launch a product. It's almost a pre-sale thing as opposed to helping
Hmm.
people get their company going, which kind of
Yeah.
loses the appeal to me. But back in that day, Kickstarter was really people just wanted to help out businesses. They wanted to get something up and going, and so I think it's a good thing to. The other thing is to get that feedback early, right? You don't want to early. You can get the feedback. You can get people that are willing to give you money or that feedback, the better, rather than waiting too long in the process. And by that time, you've now run out of time, you've run out of money, and you can't do it anymore. So got that feedback, you made the pivot. Now, how was it taking it from the idea of making the pivot, redesigning it, to actually getting into manufacturing and selling it?
Yeah, I mean, it was back to the drawing boards on the R&D front. So had to get that design to be universal. And then we had to figure out how to explain to people how to get this put inside of their shirt. So unlike a collar stay that goes in and out really easily, mine is sewn into the shirt. There's always two layers here in the placket. And there's
Mm,
always two layers here in the collar band. So you have to go to the dry cleaner or tailor, open up a couple stitches, slide it in, sew it back together. So that is a process and an extra step that almost no other product has. I mean,
mm,
think about any other product on the market that you buy one place and you have to go somewhere else just to use it. There just isn't that out there. So that was the next task that we had to overcome. But it opened us up to, instead of selling, 1,000 dress shirts, we're selling to tens of millions. And what turned out to be in 2019, a billion dress shirts were sold in the US. So
mm.
it opened us up to a lot bigger market. And I could fit $20,000 worth of inventory in a shoebox instead of, an entire warehouse of dress shirts and sizes and colors and fits. And I mean, it's a
Mm.
logistical
No,
nightmare to do dress
and I think
shirts.
that's a good point of, hey, let's make it simpler, because otherwise you have to deal with all the different SKUs of every size of an individual, and how big or small, and what size their neck is, and how long their arms are. And if you can say, take the same idea and make it much more universal, I think it was a great, or probably a much more beneficial pivot to you guys as company. So, well,
Well, we're
now as you
bootstrapped,
take, oh,
so
go ahead.
it helps to, keep you got to think about costs. If you're only
Mm,
have the money that you're putting in, it was definitely a deciding factor. And well, let's
mm.
just keep that overhead low and see what we can do about the marketing and getting it out there that way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So now you guys have, you finally got through the R&D, you made your pivots, you got it up and going, you got it manufactured, and you guys are, a real boy, so to speak, and today, business now. What's the next, 6 months to a year look for you guys? Where are you headed, and what's the next, or what's the next plans?
So we launched in January 2016 online, direct to consumer. We've sold about 315,000 units
Hmm.
worldwide. So we're really focusing now on that licensing deals. We went day one. My partner worked for Salesforce, so he knew how to get into the biggest corporations and work his way up that corporate ladder, which
Hmm.
is nothing I ever had to deal with. So he got us into meetings with all the biggest brands. We talked to all those guys early on, and they said it seems like a good idea, but we just don't know if our customer wants it or needs it. So we went direct to consumer to prove the concept, and
Hmm.
we've done that now. And now we're going back out to those guys and saying, look, it's time, especially in the days of COVID, where you really need to stand out to get somebody to part with their
Hmm.
money. Just a standard old regular old dress shirt's not going to do it anymore. And we have the one innovative thing that's going to help these brands stand out. So we're really working towards the mass and getting it into a ton of brands and into a lot of shirts.
Well, hey, that's cool. That's awesome. So, well, all right. So now we've talked a little bit about your journey. I'm going to jump to the two questions I always ask is after we get towards the end of the podcast. So, first question I always ask is, during your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
So we were going direct to consumer. We were about 2 years in, and it was going pretty well, like really well.
Hmm.
And we had decided that dry cleaners was going to be the way we wanted to sell this. This is going to be our distribution model. So
Hmm.
we went to the Clean Show, which is a dry cleaning trade show in Las Vegas, and we got such unbelievable reception at that trade show. Like Dickies, massive Dickies brand was down the aisle from us with a huge booth. We had this little 10 by 10 booth, and they
Hmm.
were like, dude, what are you guys doing over here? Why is there people spilling into the aisle trying to get to talk to you guys? We had all the attention on the show, and we had gotten the contact information for the owners of like 1,500 to 1,700 locations of dry cleaners across the US that were like, this is the greatest thing ever. We're going to make a fortune. We're going to love it.
Hmm.
Uh, at that show, we decided to turn off basically our direct to consumer advertising
Hmm.
because we thought that these guys were all going to pick this up instantly and we're going to go. And it really threw off our cash flow for quite a long time. So that was not
Hmm.
the best decision ever. But if you were there at that moment and seeing these people lining up, handwriting out their information, giving business cards, giving us anything they could to contact us, you were like, dude, you guys hit the gold mine. So
Hmm. So in other words, you turned off where your cash flow was on the online, and then did you ever get the sales? Did it ever come to fruition, or did it not even end up working out?
Those guys have good intentions, not always the best decisions, best businessmen. I think they know what they know and they don't know what they don't know.
Mm,
We're in about 650 dry cleaners, so we're not, we've got into a lot of guys, a lot of those businesses, and
mm,
our customers and their customers that take advantage of our product really love it.
mm.
We try to make it as easy as possible for the customer to get the product. So it's working out. It's just a little slower than we had
Working out, but not
anticipated.
didn't catch on fire and this hockey stick
Yeah,
up quite as quickly as you
yeah,
thought.
no.
All right. I think that's a good lesson to learn is, hey, don't turn off your cash flow until you've actually got the purchase orders in hand and the money coming. So, okay. Second question. If you're talking now to somebody that's just getting into or just getting started with a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Be stubborn. I never ever quit when it looks like this is a terrible idea or you hear no for the thousandth time. You just have to persevere and keep going and keep pushing because it only takes the one time. I mean, you can quote Edison and all these other people and Colonel Sanders, but
Hmm.
it really only takes the one time for it to blow up. And if you stop, then you'll never find out that one time.
And I'll give you, you talked about Edison that. Do you know, I assume you've used WD-40, right?
Mhm.
Do you know what the 40 stands for?
No.
So WD, I think WD is like water dissipating or water something like that. But the 40 was it took 40 different formulations before they actually got on the right formula. So it
Love
took
that.
him 39 failures of figuring out what was the wrong combination in order to make what now is WD-40, which everybody uses. So I always just like that as another one of those kind of stories of, how, almost to your point of keep at it, it's not going to be easy, but if you don't give up too soon, if they given up on, 39 or 38 or whatever, then you wouldn't have WD-40. So I just like that because now you can actually every time you see the 40, it's a reminder.
I love that. That's I might have to go on my wall back here. I'm starting to build out
All
my
right. Well,
inspiration
I
wile.
can help you now with your decorating. You can get a big WD-40 sign.
I don't know. Why do you have a WD-40 can?
Let me
Interesting
tell you.
story.
So, all right. Well, now as people they want to buy your product, they want to be one of your distributors, they want to be an investor, they want to be an employee, they want to be your next best friend, they want to reach out to you, or any or all of the above. What's the best way to connect up with you?
We have all the social media, so $1 Million Caller. You can get us on Instagram or Facebook. Directly, Rob at $1milliondollarcaller.com.
All right. And then I think your website is just milliondollarcaller.com as well if they wanted to purchase it, right?
Yep. I mean, who doesn't want to look like $1 million? Look at this. It'll never fold. It'll never fail. Look like $1 million
Hey,
all day long.
everybody wants to look like $1 million, so it's a great
Viagra
product.
for your shirt, man. It's Viagra for your shirt.
All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun to hear your journey and everything that you have going on. Now, for all of you that are listeners, and if you have your journey to tell and you want to come on, apply to be on the podcast, feel free to go to inventivejourneyguest.com and apply to be on the show. If you're a listener, make sure to click subscribe so you get notifications as all the new awesome episodes come out. And last but not least, if you ever need help with patents or trademarks, feel free to reach out to us at Miller IP Law. Thanks again, Rob. It's been fun to hear your journey, and I wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Hey, if you enjoyed this episode of The Inventive Journey, make sure to go and check out Startups Magazine. They're an awesome magazine and podcast centered over in the UK. And if the magazine is a digital and print magazine where they focus on tech startups and entrepreneurs, and they also have a focus on female founders and women in tech. So if you want to check out their magazine, either digital or print, it's Startups Magazine, startups with an S, magazine.co.uk. And you can also look up their podcast, which is called The Serial Entrepreneur. So go check them out. They're awesome. And definitely, if you like this episode, you'll like them.